I'm dedicating this episode to the one and only Chic Henry, a true champion and undisputed legend of street machining. Chic was always happy to see you, never a dull moment spent with Chic. The godfather of Summernats, dedicated family man, and the best friend you could ever have. Chic always met you with a smile and guaranteed a good time. As he always said, I remember that one time. Oh, the stories I could tell though. We'll miss you, mate. Farewell, my friend. Everyone must leave something behind when he dies. A child, a book, or the best damn caravan on the planet. You are gone, but thank you for all you have left behind. Our memories with you, your vision, your passion for life, and our way of life. Chic Henry, the undisputed legend of Australian car culture. So Dale, if you ever wondered why people know that car...
Yeah, I'd forgotten how popular it was, Howard.
Well, the thing was, it was a Street Machine magazine giveaway car, so it was always going to get a lot of footage. But it just, when I was sort of going through doing my homework, I'm just going, wow. There's a stack of books like this. Yeah. It's just incredible. So, mate, welcome back.
Yes, good to be back.
I think we're up to number 6. I didn't think it would take this long, but there was too much going on, and the same applies now. I think we're going to go 90 to 92 and a half.
Yep.
Because there's a whole lot going on. Try and keep the photos down, but there's so much there. So I'm not going to dwell too much, as I don't on the last one, but we need to go back a little bit because there's an overlap. So the last one was always about the blue car. We're going to give it away, all those things, but I was already progressing to get the next one going. So the first photos I've got are the actual the Fairlane.
Yep.
So I bought that in September. So I've done the deal on the other one. So I bought this, and then I didn't have all the photos in that. So as you can see, a little bit crusty.
Yes. What did we say? $650.
$650. Didn't want to sell it because he's going to do it up one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I liked about it was that all the trim, the trim...
Complete car.
Externally, internally, all the bits and pieces. The downside was...
You paid too much, obviously.
had a bit of cancer going on. So it was one of the, almost like a rush of blood. I wanted a Ford with wings. I couldn't find one. I found this one. And then when I opened the doors, I went, it's not that bad. Well, of course, you get it home and have a good look, and it was pretty bad.
Yes.
So there was a few lucky things that happened. There was a local panel shop, North Crash Repairs, that used to buy stock because they obviously did a lot of work. And I knew a guy there, and he was a GT guy. And I told him what I was doing. He said, we've got some bumpers upstairs for those. And they used to get them repressed and replated. And they had a front and back bumper. So we scored a couple of bumpers. So sometimes you can get lucky.
Yep.
And as you can see there, I got it home, put it on its guts, took the front wheels off, set it on the hubs, and then put the trolley jack under the back to get a bit of stance and get a feel for where it was going to go. And I was pretty happy with that. I mean, it wasn't necessarily, a car I had to own one day. It was just a car that was going to fulfill a need, because the plan was, and the deal that I did, and if you can remember from the last episode, which has been a few weeks now, I was at the Sydney Motor Show selling programs off the blue car, and Chic and I were there, and then Tim Britton came in, who was the editor of Street Machine. There's a picture of Tim there. And I obviously took that opportunity to have a chat, and then we ended up having a few more meetings. And the next photo there is the actual colour renderings that I sat down with Vespo and got him to draw the car, bigs and littles, pro stock look. And I said, I want to go down the pastel route with it. And what you see there is the 5 different colours that he drew up for me to say, which way do you want to go? So I'd already said to him that the violet was where I was thinking, but he threw the others in to make sure. And when I look at the others now, I think it was probably good that we went that way, but some of the others probably would look pretty cool as well. So that's how that sort of got to that car. But the reason it didn't end up being a pro stock car or pro streeter was the fact that I put 3 options to Tim. The first one was, I got no money, so I need to build a car, so I need some sponsors. So how about Street Machine Magazine doing a build series on the car, and that'll help me get my sponsorship. Second option is, we'll call it the Street Machine Magazine whatever, and you find the sponsors, and we'll get more of them because they're going to find them, and that'll save me even less money, and that's the second deal. Or the third deal was, you find that the sponsors will do the build series, and you kick in the difference that we need, and it turned out to be 20 grand. That I then had no money in the car. I'd put the labour in, and at the end of the 12 months, so I'd do 2 summer nats. I'd give the car back to them, and they could give it away. So he went away and had to talk to everything they need to talk about, and come back and went, we'll take option 3, and I've gone, well,
you beauty.
So a lot of people said to me afterwards, why would you do that? Well, the way I looked at it, if I spent all my money building a car, and then I did what I wanted to do with it, was hunt trophies. And when I finished hunting trophies, I sold it for everything it owed me. And all I put in was my labour. I thought that'd be a pretty good deal. So that's how it came about. So that was the process. So there was a few things to that. Firstly, there was the fact that it had to be built in a time frame. The next part of it was finding and liaising with all those sponsors, and there was 12 major sponsors. And then they had to shoot the build of the car, and I'm in Broken Hill and they're in Sydney.
Logistically challenging.
There was a bit going on to make all that happen. So I've got the deal done, gone home, started doing the paperwork to bring all that together. So what Street Machine said to me is that we can do the deal provided the car can be delivered anywhere in Australia and be legal.
Now, that sounds very simple.
Sort of. So to build something that's going to be cool, something that's going to win trophies, and is registerable in somewhere like Western Australia, which is quite difficult, put a whole new requirement on it. And when we sat down with the engineers that were involved, which is Transport Industry Consultants, the only real way to go about it was to do an individually constructed vehicle. So you're basically building a car to suit the current ADRs. So the ADRs for a 1990 vehicle was what had to be put in place for the Fairlane. So that's why the car ended up being what it was. And there was quite a bit done with that engineering, and this gives you a bit of an idea. This is the actual book for the car.
Comprehensive report, isn't it?
Yeah, when you consider 30 years ago where it's even got calculations and all in it. And one of the things we did with that car was we actually ran a 10-inch rim on the rear, and it was the first time ever done for New South Wales. And that was done with Rod Hadfield with his billet axles. And then the engineers, and they worked out. And the reason that they had no offset was so that they would sit over the centre of the bearing, blah, blah, blah. But that was the only way we could get a 10 registered in all the states. So there was a few things that we did that were fairly unique that slowed the process down a bit. But as you'll hear later, we got there in the end. So of course, I mentioned that I was looking to build a new shed. So the photos here now, I ended up getting a half acre now. Out west, you can actually rent your land. So the Western Lands Division, you would actually sign up for the block and you'd pay rent every year on the land rather than buying it. So I could basically rent the land. You can convert it. So I ended up converting it back to where you purchase it, but it's still cheap compared to say over here. So pretty much got the land for nothing. So then I've got 35 grand from the car, so now I'm starting to build the shed. But of course, building family, so we're on the tools. Young Lee with his bike there.
And it's not a little shed.
And it's not a little shed, so we've upped the ante a bit, and it ended up a bit bigger than planned because Dad was restoring cars, and he was running out of room, so he said, I'll tack a couple of bays on the end because you're going to end up with a couple of these vintage cars, so you need some room. So when you see the big runner roller doors, 2 of those were actually Dad's that he'd paid for. But the same thing, I did all the formwork and stood all the frames, and then had people that either paid or helped to finish the concrete, the screeding and stuff. And then with this particular shed, my plan was to sheet it and all. But I mean...
You sure it's not a swimming pool? How it looks like a swimming pool there.
Well, mate, when you're laying concrete in Broken Hill in the summer and it's 40 degrees, you've got to keep it moist and damp.
Yes.
Yeah, so we used to put a little motor around the edge and stick the hose in and fill it up. So we're just about done there. So the guy building next to me was a licensed builder, like his own house.
Yep.
So I said to him, mate, you better give me a price to throw the iron on this thing because I'm running out of time, big time. So he ended up sheeting it, and then I did all the internal. So I've fur and channeled it to get it ready to put gyprock on it. So insulated, gyprock, and then out there using an evaporative air cooler.
Yes.
Keep it nice and cool. So it's progressing well. So the plan was to have this all finished and ready to pull the car apart at Easter. And Mark Sanders was coming up from Adelaide to give me a hand.
I see your dad's got his car in the photo again. He liked doing that, didn't he?
I couldn't help but put that photo in because Dad used to take a lot of photos, but he normally strategically placed whatever he was driving. So yeah, that was one that he restored from when he found up the bush and did a full job on. And
good at self-promotion he was.
Pretty much ready to rock and roll there. And talking about self-promotion, I talk about him all the time. I don't put too many photos up. And I spotted this one when I was going through the photos. I went, that's about the right timeline.
Yep.
And so that's my dad, the young one in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The young
and my
fella,
brother Reg. Yeah, so having lunch. So it looks like a work day because I've got my tie on. And then the next one, just fitting, I thought I'd do a little bit of family while we're at it, is the date on that one, we're up the lake in January. Obviously grabbed a day or a weekend and headed up Kopi.
Yep. Cool off.
So you're going to see in this program where the photos, we keep sort of coming and toing and froing. So these are now, we need to do photos for Street Machine magazine because they're going to want to do the before photo.
Yeah.
Well, I've already got the car home. So we took it out, and I don't know how big a Mad Max fan you are, but where the compound was, this is the pinnacles. So it sat just behind the compound. So we took it out there, and that's Mark Bean there on the camera, and Mark was a bit of a Mad Max nut. So we took the car out there, grabbed a few weeds and stuck against it. And of course, my shot behind him and then his just shows why you're a professional photographer, mate.
He knew what he was doing.
Knew what he was doing. So that's the before. So now Easter comes, we actually put a 20 litre drum on the bonnet for fuel because the pump was stuffed. Got it running, ran it around out the front, around the block, back. Yep, everything
Make
works.
sure it worked.
So I could sell it because it had a little 260 V8 in. So we got it running and then stripped it down, and then that was ready to go on the trailer for Mark to take back to Adelaide with him because we put that through the dip. Give it a caustic dip. Yeah, so that was the first time I'd done that, and it's I'm not going to get into that because it's a really long story. But the next run of photos now is pretty much, inside the nice new shed with the gyprock all painted. And a lot of the photos we set up for the mag. So I shot like that with me standing by the engine and all was to do with that. Proud as punch, new toy. And then this one here, I had to put it in. So that's the crate engine. So Ford were one of the sponsors. So it was a brand new EB engine. And we got the engine, I think, in May. Okay. And the EB V8 didn't come out till August.
Wow.
So we actually had all of this. So they'd done the testing, obviously, and all that sort of stuff. And in the end, I ended up having a phone number of someone I could ring to talk to with the people that were actually putting the V8 into that model because we were struggling with wiring and all that because nothing was available. The car wasn't out yet.
Yeah, it hadn't been done yet.
So it was motor and gearbox, and I love bringing these things out of the file, but I love this one because it's a delivery slip to Howard Astill at Radio Taxis, and a little bit down the bottom says reason for shipment is shipped to the SVO contractor.
Special Vehicle Operations
That's
Contractor.
So I thought that was pretty cool, so I've got to put that in. And then pretty much both Windsors, but there's the 260 and the 5 litre side by side, so pretty much same size. And then once again another setup shot, so we've obviously got the chassis done there and starting to build the rest of the frame.
Yep.
And there's Louis and I setting up, working out where the engine, so you can see there's no firewall. and no front at all. So basically fabricated the whole front, the whole chassis and the rear end. And in these chassis shots, to get the engineering and to have that nice clean look and get it engineered, actually had those all plasma cut so that all the pickup points of the suspension are actually built into the rails.
Okay.
So if you want to put a tag on, you can't just weld it on. It's got to either overlap or be plugged or, all those things for rego.
Yep.
So we actually made our own rails. That's a good photo of it there. And then, built the tubs and all the rear. And then this was the sort of half-baked rotisserie. So two engine stands. And if someone told me they were going to do this today, I'd say, you're a bloody idiot. But it did work, but it was pretty unstable, and I don't know, it never fell off it, to be honest. So it was a full chassis car. And I found all the original documents that the engineer had sent to me, that this is what I think we can do and the sizes and all that, and then I measured it and then sent it back to him. So I've got all that documentation. So when we do the build series, we'll be able to get into some of that. It'll be interesting. So getting into the car, I think we're probably running it around July, August now, so a few months in. But I'm still going to work. And part of that work, as we've talked about before, is that whole community thing that I've been involved in and was continuing to be involved in. And part of that, there was a new organisation created called Broken Hill Proud. And I'm not quite sure who initiated it, but Broken Hill was going from a mining town to a tourism town. And without tourism, they're always going to struggle. And it's interesting, right now, there's another mining boom on. There's a new cobalt mine opening out there, which is going to be quite big, and they've done mineral sands. There's even talk of iron ore. There's a lot going on out there. But there's always been that up and down, and tourism's been the one that's always been able to flatten it. And one of the problems with Broken Hill is if you ask someone that lived in Broken Hill, should I come out for a visit? They go, what the bloody hell you want to come out here for? So the Broken Hill Proud thing was started, and I got involved in that because of my tourism link. And this was just an ad that we had in the paper at the time that obviously my mum and someone had kept because it's in the pile of stuff that I've got. Whereas as a business, and my mug on there, that we were promoting and asking other businesses to be involved and support to promote making people Broken Hill proud so that we could promote it as a town. So just another one of those things that I was up to at the time. So the photos now are going to keep going on with the build, and with this particular car, Mark Sanders had jumped back on board again, so Road Performance Modifications in Adelaide, and him and I had designed up a suspension to give us what we needed. So we wanted it super low, still wanted to be able to handle and work. And one of the things with that is the width of the rack in relation to getting your bump steer right without modifying the rack. So if you shorten the rack, then the engineer's got to approve it, especially if they're individually constructed. And if you use a rack out of an existing vehicle and don't shorten it, you don't have those issues. So we worked out the pivot point we needed for the turret ends, and then I went out to Wreckers, measured all the cars, and it turned out to be a TC Cortina rack. And the rack also had a steel frame, the tube was steel rather than aluminium, so then we could weld brackets onto it. So that's sort of what that's about. And then you can see the knuckles there, you might recognise those, so they're Tirana knuckles. So a lot of it was all using Australian made products that were on existing cars that makes the engineering process simpler. That's the process. So you can see the tabs going on there.
Well, I noticed the drawing on the floor as well, Hal. It's the
well, mate, the situation is
before CAD, before computer drafting.
I can pretty much do anything, but back then I didn't even know what a computer was, I don't think. But I'd design it all with the engineer, and then I'd draw it out in full size on the floor with the texter, and then I'd cut my bits of steel to suit what I'd drawn and weld it up, and
makes perfect sense.
Bob's your uncle. So that was my my high-tech bench, mate. That's what it was.
Low slung bench.
That's it. And then these are the top wishbones, and I've sort of thrown that in because you can see the one on the left, it's all over the place. So pretty much grab a bit of steel, weld it in, get your centres, drill all the holes. And what we'd done again from an engineering point of view, we used a HQ top adjustment point, so to do your camber caster. And then the lower arms were all designed around the HQ suspension setup. So it was all, they're all made wishbones, but from an engineering perspective,
proven
technology. Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. And I don't recall exactly what stubs we used on this one, but that's in there because everything was diagram.
Yep.
And I had young Evan Spain actually helped me with this car. Pretty much we pretty much took on an apprentice for every car. So he find a young bloke that wants to get his hands dirty and learn a bit about doing these sort of things. And Evans, I think he's still in Mildura now. He's been watching and sent me a few photos on some of the boats and stuff because they used to go up the lake as well.
Yep.
And he became a mechanic, and so he's been following. So he's waiting to hear his name. So there it is, looking. So I set the car up once the chassis was built. We set it up on some stands, and we made it 300 above ground level.
Okay.
And then I made that steel bench that's like a foot high that kicks around. Well, that was the ground level. So you can see the back wheels sitting on that. So you could move that around, and that would be your ground level.
Yep.
And then everything had to be 100mm clearance for your rego. So when you're doing exhaust, and I still do similar things today, but that's how that was set up. Starting to get some lines, so I've done half door trims, like the door skins, and just starting to clean the lines up. And then the next photo there of the exhaust, to get it engineered again, we needed EPA. So the fact that the engine's out of a late model, so the current model, to get it passed without having to go through a full EPA test, we then looked at utilising everything from the EB. So we used the cats, the muffler, the fuel filler, carbon canister.
Yep. Vapor recovery system, all that sort of stuff.
Whatever was on the motor went back on it, and the fuel system and the exhaust, so that once again we could tick that engineering box to say we haven't modified it, therefore we don't need to retest it.
Yep.
And the testing was obviously where the money is. It's probably still expensive today, but it would have been a lot harder back then. So as we're doing all this, we're trying to photograph it, and then Street Machines come out because they started then doing the build series. So the old guts and bolts there, HA on the grinder, and then they did some breakdown, and obviously I haven't read it all what they said back then, but a couple of photos of me there and a couple of Mark. God, we were young.
Still are mentally.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. Remember it like it was yesterday, most of the time. So we're sort of progressing along there, but you can sort of see, and I'll just open this file up a bit more here somewhere, that we're actually, the date on that photo is the 12th of the 12th. So we're a couple of weeks away from Summernats.
Yes, literally.
And we're looking a bit behind. So in typical form, and you've worked with me, so you've seen most of the stuff's done and it's all around, and it doesn't take that long to put them together. But we're a long way behind, I can tell you.
To the casual observer, Howard,
not a chance in it.
Panic.
Dad used to come over and say, "There's no bloody way you're going to make it," you know.
Yep.
So it's all going together, but we're really in trouble. And to get the engine to run, so it's computerised, all that sort of stuff. They supplied the computer and the wiring loom out of the new model. So I clipped everything on the engine that I could find, and because it had all the sensors on it, and then clipped it on the computer, and then rerouted all the wires and worked out. And we had to get the speedy to work because it was electronic, all those things. So I'd been working on all of that, and when we finally got it ready and we're sort of days out, it won't go. I mean, it didn't even have a sense of nothing.
It was not happening.
So I had a couple of mates worked at the dealer, so they come and had a bit of a look, and they didn't have a book yet for it because it's still new.
Too new.
It came out. They would have had a book because it came out in August. They didn't have a book when I was trying to chase it early to do the wiring, but by the time I'm trying to get it to go in December, the car's been out for 3 or 4 months. So they come and had a look, and then I think Jeff Keane was the one that came out, and he brought the little light that they plug onto the injectors, which was pretty new tech then. Turns it over, he said there's no spark at the injector, so we've got no fuel, so it's not going to run. So we're chasing it back, and I've got the books there, and it's like, what have I done wrong? And what it turned out to be, and I always say to people, it's going to be an earth. The module for the computer module in the factory car is bolted to the A-pillar.
Yes.
I had it bolted to a timber floor.
there's your problem, Howard.
So no earth.
Sounds simple
So
now.
we put an alligator clip on each end, boom, away she
Away
went.
went.
So fortunately, you know, we managed to get it going, but then pretty much straight away it went into limp mode. And once again we put the thing on it and worked it out. It was pretty much coming something through the gearbox, and the gearbox was supplied by Ford, but it wasn't new, it was out of a test car.
Okay.
So obviously it come out of the test car because it had a problem or something. But anyhow,
Yeah.
so when we went to the summer nats, the car was still in limp mode, but it still drove enough to do what we need to do, and I'll talk about that when we get there. So we're working our way towards it,
Yep.
and there's all those bits. So this was where the games room was eventually going to be, and the blue carpet come out of the old house because we've given that gave it a reno to sell it.
Yep.
So that's the blue carpet, so that's in the games room, and you can see the trim bits there and the stereo.
And the trophies.
That's the same day. That must have been camera day. It's the 12th of the
Yeah.
12th as well.
Yep.
So all that's going on, and then Street Machine reminds me that this is a little bit out of sequence, but this photo that's being done now was for to be in Street Machine magazine when the car is debuted at Summer
Because
Nats
they're doing a feature
on the car.
on the car for the debut.
Yeah, so that it coincides. So
Yeah.
like, oh look, here's the new car. And, oh, guess what? We've got a magazine feature on.
And 2 weeks earlier than that, there's no front end or engine in there. So yeah.
So prior to now, because it's all done different nowadays. It used to be printed overseas and sent out on a boat.
Yep.
So don't hold me to it, but it was like 8 weeks or 10 weeks prior that it had to be shot.
Yep.
Well, of course, we're not within Cooey. So what you're looking at there now is that it's got everything bolted on it to look right. It's got no front end, no engine, no wiring. The lights are on because there's a battery on the front floor with a couple of wires running out to the lights, and sufficient to stage it to get it all to look right. And that's Mark Bean back again to do the photos. And we're back out at the Pinnacles, the Mad Max spot. So this one here, we took the car out in the trailer in the dark to do they used to love doing daybreak or dusk. It was always the go. So he wanted to do a daybreak because of the way the light was and all that sort of stuff. So we're out there at 4 a.m, sitting on the tailgate of the truck having some breakfast.
Freezing.
Waiting for the sun to come up.
Yeah.
And then that's the photo that we took, or he took, that I helped with.
With partial interior and no
With
engine.
not much going on. And there was only chrome on one side.
Yep.
And you'll see in the future when we get to it. So see across the top of that photo, it's all smudgy looking.
Yep.
Well, nowadays you just hop in the computer and smudge it. Well, back then they used to have a slide that dropped in front of the camera, and they used to put Vaseline across the top to get that look. So that was back when the old photographer had to do a bit of work.
Yep.
So these are the shots that he took, and obviously we've seen that one over there as well. And the one down the bottom there, you can see there's no engine, and there's no shocky or nothing. It's just got a bit of inch tube with a couple of holes in it to hold the front end up.
Did the job?
So, what do they call it? Smoke and mirrors?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was that feature. So that came out, so the pressure's on. You know, the magazine's coming out, and I didn't know we were going to get a cover, but the magazine's coming out with a cover, the whole thing. So, and we're
And the car's not finished.
and we're under the pump again,
Still.
always. But while that's all going on, we've still got a life to live. We've still got some kids and some
You're only doing that in your
nieces
spare
and nephews
time.
and all that sort of stuff. So I love this shot.
This is the dynasty photo.
That is the dynasty photo.
Astill dynasty.
We've just lost some of our lights though.
Oh.
Oh well, we'll just have to knuckle down and keep going.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was Emily. So that's my niece, my sister in the middle, and of course Mum and Dad and Lee and Louise and Heather and all the rest of the tribe. Brother Reg, his family. So, although that was a classic. So that's in Mum and Dad's lounge
Yep.
at the house, and I just think that's a cool one. So back to the car. That was only one night. Back on the job, and I found a range of shots that just shows what the car finish looked like when it was finished. I think this was one of Street Machine's. The engine bay, it evolved a little bit. It ended up, by the time it was totally finished, that little horrible air cleaner was done away with, and the original Ford air cleaner was put on it. It ran a lot better that way.
Yep.
And on the top of the air cleaner, it's still original, I think, there, and I ended up getting a little Rock Solid Automotive plaque done for it. And then the undercarriage there, so that's all acrylic, and it's all colour sanded, polished.
Lots
component,
of hours of work.
lots of polishing, yeah. And that was all done, but we were just running out of time to get it assembled and put together. So you can see that exhaust.
Yep.
And there's that rack with the brackets welded up, a bit of bog on them. And that's one of the nice shots. That was done down at the old North Mine, and we're setting up for a photo with the mine shaft and the typical Broken Hill shot. And the freight train come through, and that's that line in the back is open shutter with the freight train.
Yep.
And I think that was, they called that one Violet Rumble or something. So yeah, that was all pretty cool. So that's that engineer's report that I spoke about earlier. And this was all, obviously all the paperwork was done, but to get the final approval we had to do the noise test. And we also had to do the brake test.
Brake test,
yeah. So they do a brake fade test. So they go at 60 kilometres an hour, apply the brakes, with a meter on the pedal and all that. So that's the actual one there, and I think the date says 23rd.
That's the 20th on, yeah.
Yeah, the 23rd.
Yep.
Is it now? Yeah, 23rd of the 12th. So they were a Victorian company, and they used to come up to Mildura and do inspections there. So I'd arranged with them to be there as late as possible to give me as much time as possible.
Yep.
So I can't remember, I think that might have been a Friday. So they were booked to do that, but I'm then in Victoria, so I've got to get it registered, which I need to do in New South Wales. So Wentworth had a RTO back then.
Yep.
RMS now. So I'd sent the plates, the rock plate from Broken Hill down to that office. Had all the paperwork sitting there waiting to go. Took the car to Mildura, did all the brake tests, got the engineer's report, took the car back because it had to have a visual inspection of the engine numbers. And I hadn't talked about it earlier, but the engine, and because the engine didn't have a number, and we're doing an individually constructed vehicle, and we cut all of the numbers off it. Once the car was built, we had to apply for numbers, and then when the numbers came, we had to actually have a police officer come to the workshop and watch me stamp the numbers in to sign off to approve the numbers. So this car was, we tried to do it all right. With what I know now, there was a few things on that car that probably didn't pass all the ADRs at that time. But I tried really hard to make sure everything was done so that it all fitted the right criteria. So that's done on the Friday. Go and get it registered. Pack everybody up again and then head off to Canberra. And I don't think we went that day because we've still got like 9 hours. So the next day being...
Leave Christmas Eve. Sounds simple.
Yeah, so we would have left the 24th. Drove to Canberra and we stayed out at the Eagle Hawk, the big motel up there with a nice pool and all that sort of stuff.
Northern Canberra,
And had Christmas at the motel. So there's the kids and me. I'm a bit worn out, I think, Dave.
You don't get to sleep in on Christmas morning, Howard. Come on.
No, that's true, but I mean, it wasn't like I got up either. And then there's Christmas lunch. So I think that's the once and only time we've ever had. We haven't had Christmas lunch at home, or at least at the folks or somewhere. So that was at the motel. And then pretty much once we'd had lunch, I'm back on the car trying to finish edge the carpets and things that I haven't done. And of course, there's a lot of other people staying there, the car people and people wanting to help. And
out in the car park working away.
Getting ready to rock and roll for, it would have started on the Thursday. So I'm trying to think, I think it might have been not Boxing Day, the day after. So, and there we are, back out the front of Building B.
Yeah, Howard's spot.
It's my spot. So I shared my spot that year with Craig, actually, with Craig Parker, with the XY. So him and his mum and dad had a caravan parked up there. And when I got there, they said, "You're in my spot. What's going on?" So I think that might have been when I met Craig. I might have met him at the Adelaide Hot Rod Show, and then we caught up there again, and we'd sort of pretty much camped together. So we're there, we're in limp mode, we're getting around, it's all sort of working. we didn't wire the stereo until we got there. That wasn't like that. Just wasn't done. And then when I got there, there was a guy come in and he worked at Pioneer or something and said, "Oh, I'll wire it up." So we did this bloody jerry rig job on it, and it worked and it cranked, but wasn't very pretty. So we got all that running and we sort of did everything we needed, and it was really about being there, making it happen. I had no great expectations of the week and where it was going to end up. But me being me, I'd organised all our merch. So we had shirts and jackets and hats and all in the nice neons and of the day, and looking after our sponsors and stuff. So that was all on the go. And there's a good shot of Louis and I having a little break. And you can see in the background there's a red XY that's back sticking out of my tent.
Yeah, funny that.
So, yeah.
Mr. Parker.
Mr. Parker. And of course, as we all know now, the weekend went by. We did all the events. I managed to do the driving events in limp mode. And I learnt something that year was the fact that if you don't spin the wheels on the grass, you go faster. So the old column auto, drop it in, around all the things and back. We actually did a really good time, and I think we come 9th or something like that in the Motorcana. And that was enough points with all the other things to get it, and we made top 10. We didn't achieve any other trophies, but of course we won Grand Champion. So winners are grinners, mate.
Absolutely.
And
that's why they call you the trophy hunter.
The trophy hunter. And then I cut that out of that. That's the top 20. Their lovely dress code. So it's a couple of boys in there you might recognise, but
a few mullets.
Ronnie Barclay in the middle there. So that was Ronnie's debut actually. So he was within weeks of being ready the previous year, and not like me. He stayed home because it wasn't finished, and he come back the following year, and then.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that.
No.
Get it done.
And then once we got running, because everyone always says, you know, you would have been around with Ronnie around that time. So that particular year with the Fairlinks only had that 1 year, we got the car finished, and then pretty much every show it was like who's going to win type of deal. And when I looked through the trophy list, we didn't do too bad. So back in the local rag again, mate, back in the paper.
They might be Broken Hill proud, Howard.
Yeah, and I mean they followed most of the people that went away. You know, if they raced boats or they, you know, they were cricket players or whatever. If it was someone local doing okay, they tended to give it a bit of a plug. So, cars now back. We've got something like 3 weeks to get ready to start doing what we call the circuit, so doing the trips. And I needed a display, and I needed to be able to promote my sponsors and all. So I made this framework that goes all the way around, so I had my own lighting, so wherever we went I had plenty of lights. And I always liked photos of car at the Oakland Roadster Show in the US, and they had all, you know, big lights in the dome lights, and it put the dots on the car. So I come up with this idea that if I put the lights all the way around close to the car, I'd get that same effect. So that's what the go was there, and then I made up panels to go around the top, which you'll see in a minute when we get to the shows. So I was talking about that wiring. That was the wiring that was done at the Summernats. It's pretty nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Looks all right from here.
And then that's what it looked like when it was finished. And then the bit of wire down the bottom, that's the battery charger. I had this massive power supply to run the stereo. So when it was on the stand, you could run the stereo all day without running through the battery. So then it's on. We're travelling. So
promote.
So I talked about always wanting to go to Western Australia. So this was on the trip to the west. And me being me, I didn't do it the easy way really. Broken Hill's pretty well located, and we're only like 2,500 from Perth.
Doesn't sound like much.
So we went Broken Hill over to Norseman, and then dropped down and had a mate with a motel at Albany. And we did Esperance, and then the big tree forest as you come up to Perth. And then once we did the show at Perth that weekend, we then drove from Perth to Melbourne the following week with the kids. And
I'm amazed they still talk to you.
Did a show in Melbourne the following weekend, and then drove home, and it was about 7,500 k's.
That's how you did 22,000 k's in a year.
That year, So there we are on the bite.
Yep.
And obviously 4 people and 1 camera, so I did a little cut and shut. So me with the kids and then me with Heather and Louise. And of course there's always roadworks.
Always.
Always. So a bit of mud. So that's us at Esperance, I think. Playing with the kids. So then we're doing the show. So there's the signs I was talking about.
Yep.
So they were core flute. So it's all about weight. Trying to keep the weight down.
Absolutely.
Still got to get carted around. And then the little box at the back there was our merch shop. So we could stand in there and I could talk to people about the car or whatever and sell them a shirt or
a jacket.
Or a hat. Or I could leave Heather there and I could go off and wander around.
Oh, you wouldn't do that, would you, Howard? No.
So those shots were Perth. The next lot of trophies there is at Brisbane. So I don't have any photos of Melbourne. So we went Perth to Melbourne, and then so that was January. Then this would have been May, because the hot rod show was always the 2 hot rod shows. Yeah, so I found that one.
That looks familiar. No. Look
at that. Ooh. So there's a little story to go with that one, and the reason
Top
I pulled
Street
it
Machine
out.
92.
So you see there, hand it over here. I've got a little story about that.
Oh, you
one.
got a story. Okay.
So see the photo of the 3 of us there. So we're all standing up there like that, and I can't remember who started it, but someone did. But we all ended up with them on our head, as you would. So that's Robbie Beecham and Rod Hadfield. So we got in a bit of trouble with that with the promoter, but anyhow, things you do.
It's all a bit of fun.
All a bit of fun. So that's top competition, top hot rod, top street machine. In fact, talking about Ronnie Barclay, him and I were standing next to each other when they were doing the presentations.
Yes.
And I don't know whether he said it to me or I said it to him, but I think it was $500 for top car.
Yep.
I said, "You want to go halves now?" And he said, "No." So I ended up with the money.
Yeah.
So that was the go. And there's a bit of fun. So that's Louie and I, of course, and that's
Poor Heather.
And no, that's Ange.
Oh, is that
Ange Henry. That's Chic Henry's daughter. Yeah, things you do.
Hiding under the hair.
So there's Heather and Lee and Spog, the car detailer. He used to come around, see what I'm up to. So that's after I got home from Brisbane. And of course we were doing a bit of plant things, and there's not much available in Broken Hill. And
Well, you like your lawn and a bit of landscaping.
and a bit of landscaping.
Yeah.
I think Heather might have said if you see some cheap plants, so they all of those plants were in that trailer with the car, and they came home from Queensland. Yeah, might have been for the new house.
Might have been.
So that's a good shot of the stand, and there's Louise in the front there, and Heather on duty because I'm on the camera, and then all the sponsors around the top.
Yep.
So we used to pull that. I had that all made, bolted all together, and just used to all bolt together, and it laid down the side of the trailer, the carpet tiles. And then at that show, there was a guy there with the 64 compact, and he said, "Oh, I wouldn't mind doing a photo with the 2 together."
It's interesting when you see, highly modified, the same vehicle. It's like, wow,
Yeah, chalk and cheese.
big difference.
So that was that one. And then guess what time of year it is?
Must be the time for a junket.
A junket, July.
July junket.
I couldn't find out where it was, but yeah, another flag conference.
Yep.
And I've always heard it, but big blokes shouldn't wear white.
Yeah, you're probably correct there. Yeah, or at least put your jacket on.
That was nearly at my max weight, I think, by the look of that. So the whole time that all this has been going on, that we've talked about, whether it was bikes or cars, I've always felt the urge to have a shop.
Yep.
You know, man, how cool would it be to have a bike shop, or how cool would it be to have a car shop?
Yep.
So I'd got to that point that I've got all these contacts with my sponsors now, and the opportunity to probably buy product. So I thought I wouldn't mind opening a car shop in Broken Hill. So I had to talk to the missus and I had to talk to the old man and work out which way we're going to go about it. And I couldn't find anywhere to rent. And I said to Dad, "There's bloody nowhere." He said, "Well, build something." Yeah, right, eh? Build something,
Sounds
So
easy.
what happened was there was a block of land in the main street down the end that had been vacant for some time, and I managed to do a deal on that. And I thought, well, I'll buy that and build a couple of shops. I'll go in one, rent the other one. Well, this little house that we're looking at now was next to that, and Hungry Jack's was then on the other side of that. So without getting right into it, the guy that owned it organised that if I built a shop there, he had someone to go in it. So I ended up building 3 shops.
Yep.
So while we're at the conference, Dad says, well, while you're up there, I'll get that house sorted out.
Yeah.
So when you come back, we get a start. So he sorted
I like
it out,
it.
right?
He sorted it out.
Got the Kato in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Made short work of
a
that.
few tippers.
Yep.
And then, of course, away we went. We started building again. So the way I did this was Dad ran the site, and then Louis now had been away overseas or whatever, and I had a good chat to him about potentially managing the shop for me. So this was become Rock Solid Automotive.
Yep.
And, of course, he's an electrician. So he started work when we started building, and then once we finished, he became the manager.
Oh, we'll use his skills.
And then young Rodney, we employed him to work with Louis in the car audio, but he was an electrician.
Yep.
And then my brother-in-law was between gigs or whatever, can't think what he was up to, so he worked with me. And then Kim Hooper, who's the boilermaker, he now had his own business, so he come on board as well, and me and Dad, and we built some shops. So Besser Block, obviously, and the red car there, we decided we were going to move the XY on. I think we'd had that 2 or 3 years. And I bought that, was a Fairmont Gear EA Falcon, and that'll crop up later in one of the other photos. So that's all the building. Obviously Dad's photo again.
Dad's car.
Yeah, so the Cougar, one of Dad's toys
that
he had for a while. And then once we got started, I was obviously would promote Speed. If Speedway was on, I'd get a few bikes or cars there to promote the shop. And as you can see, this is like 92, 93. So we were a rare spares distributor, which meant we had Ford Motorsport because they used to be the distributor for that.
Yep.
Petters, Momo, Maguire's back then, Pioneer. And then we needed a ute, delivery ute.
It's a Holden ute.
It's a Holden ute. Well, Louis a Holden man, see?
Yeah, good on you, Louis.
Yeah. So I thought,
shout out to Louis.
So that was Louis' work truck. So we bought that off one of the wreckers actually. He'd done it up as a bit of a sideline.
And Dad's car in the background.
Yeah, Dad probably took the photo.
Yeah.
So there's the red. I haven't got many photos of it. So it ended up with an EB front on it and a set of 16s and Petters and all the stuff we stole in the shop and a big stereo. And that was Heather's driver. So she used to drive around. She'd go, you can't put that on the car. It's got bloody great Rock Solid down the side of it.
Of course you can.
So then there's a few inside shots here. Young Lee there learning the ropes. And then you can see there, steering wheels, chrome, polishes.
All the bolt-on bits.
All the bits and pieces, stereos. And then that's the family crew in. All got the Rock 4 shirts on. Must have been something happening. Lee and Louise out the front. Worked out really good by the way that front was. And Broken Hill's heritage, the whole town's heritage listed, but if you build something in the main street, it's got to look heritage.
Blend in.
You can't build a modern building.
Yep.
So that's young Rodney there and Louis doing a shelf. And then I'm still got shows to do. So we're back on the road. Sydney Hot Rod Show. So Sydney Hot Rod Show was on again, off again, and that was at the exhibition building. It was a really good show, that one. And then I slipped down to Mount Gambier, got invited to go down there, and we managed to find a time to get down there. Had a good time down there. Yep. I don't know what the result was down there, but we mainly went to. That's the one on the left there, the Falcon. That's the Pioneer rig, so it probably something through Pioneer. Wanted me to go down there. Yep. So then the next few photos. So this is, it's like to and from because there's a whole lot going on. Street Machine, I think, came out about 3 or 4 times to shoot. So this is Tim Britton, and I can't think of who the other person is there. Work that out. But that's Tim in the black shirt, and the photographers loved the light. And I mean anyone Monday Plains. That's why they shoot movies and stuff out there.
Yep.
And this is obviously at the back of the taxis because we'd use the hoist to do all the underside shots.
Yep.
And we'd set up out there, put a bit of carpet and all down so they could do engine bay shots with a natural light on the footpath.
As you do.
And then that's back to Mark Bean again. So that's one of those Monday Plains shots. And that's the result, which looks a lot better than that in the mag. It's a bit hard to photograph magazines.
But there's a lot of magazine shots.
There is a lot of magazines.
It's been in a lot of magazines.
Stacks and stacks.
Stacks
so that one there is actually out on Monday. and there's some really nice clay pans out there, and I hadn't thought about it until you go to film a car, but it gives you that really nice foreground with all the little rocks and stuff in it. And then this is another one we did up at one of the mines, obviously. That's the tourist mine. And all those bits of stuff in the background, actually had a squirty bottle and lighting it to get the effects.
Yep.
And I don't know whether they ever used any of it because it was a bit out there, but they were always pushing the envelope, trying to get something a bit different. And then that's pretty much that whole show year. So we've done the year, we've done all the photos, got all the magazine coverage. Now it's time to take the car back to some of that and give it to the new owners, because it's not now time for them to take ownership. So we get over there, and I've entered it, but I made a clear decision not to drive it in the events, because we'd won with the blue car as a giveaway car, and then we won with this one as a giveaway car, and both were tied with either the sponsor or the owner. And I said there that I don't want to win again, because it ain't going to go down well.
No.
And I mean, I had nothing left to prove.
No.
So it was funny, at that event in that red car, Fitzy and I went out and did the driving events. And I said to Fitzy, you drive and I'll spear, because I've never speared the spud, because I'm always driving. So he drove the red car and I'm spearing, and then we've gone out and he's running a mark. So then the camera crew come over, can you do that again? So then the camera crew hop in and we go out and do it again.
Yep.
So then like 10 minutes later gets in his car and goes out and does the driving event. So of course in the end, he is a good driver anyhow, but I always like to think I helped a little bit for him to get his first Grand Champion. So, I mean, we always had a good time, and even though we were competitors, we always got on well and had a good time, you know. So what's happening there is that's young Rodney that's working at the shop now.
Young Rocket. Yep.
And in the car, the passenger seat there, and I just picked this up when I seen the photo, I had the marketing manager for Pioneer in there showing him the stereo, and I've got him in the car sort of tied down, and I'm trying to do the Pioneer coupe deal.
In his ear, yes. Yep.
So
there's always the next car.
We'll talk about that next time, but that's what was going on there. And that's in that out the front of building being our marquee again, because I just found that to be a really good spot. As you can see, we got the chairs and the kids can somewhere to hang out. And that's looking back the other way towards the building. And then back home with more trophies. And so we did, because the car was now finished, we ended up, that's these ones up here. So top Pro Street, and I think engineered Pro Street. And more than happy with the year, more than happy to give it back. But of course, when I get there, and we took the red car over because we were going to stick that in the trailer and take it home, because we weren't going to have the car.
No, that was the plan.
That was the plan, but the magazine forgot that they were going to get the car.
So
I ended up taking it home, and I looked after it until I delivered it. And I ended up delivering it to Wollongong, because the guy that won
Now it's funny you mention this, Howard. So this is where I'm going to step in. As a young fella, I grew up here in Dapto, and bloke lived 3 houses down the road from me. He's about the same age, and he won that car.
Really?
Pat.
I delivered it to a Pat, and it was funny because I did a deal with Street Machine, and I won't go into the whole arrangement of that, but I just said if someone on the Eastern Seaboard wins it, I'll deliver it there and we'll work out an arrangement. So I'd never been to Wollongong, and I got caught on Ousley trying to stop at the bottom.
Yeah, most people do that.
So the plan was to deliver it up the road, and when I got there, the guy said, like, you get a trailer or something? He goes, no, I'll just drive it home. I go, well, it hasn't been driven for 6 months, so how far away is it? He said, oh, it's not far, but it was down bloody Ousley. So anyhow, I delivered it, and I delivered it to a storage unit. Yep. And he put it in there until he could work out, because obviously he probably got a week's notice. Oh, you won a car and we're going to deliver it next week. Yep. Yeah, so that's a small world, isn't it?
It is.
You would never know.
It is.
You would never know.
And then, Wollongong, we took 2 degrees of separation, not 6.
Yeah, so he had it a while, and he sold it to a guy in Sydney, and then that guy rang me and I spoke to him a bit, and then he was frustrated because everywhere he took it was Howard's car. Oh, you got Howard's car?
Yeah.
My F100?
Yeah.
Cappy's truck? Yeah, well, it was the same deal, and he pretty much sold it for that reason. And then he sold it on to the next guy, and that's who I bought it off 8 years later.
Wow.
And we'll tell that story next time, actually. So I'm at that point now, and the clock's ticking, and we're going to just get in on time by the look of it. where is it now? So we've already talked where the own. So the Dapto guy, then a Sydney guy, then another Sydney guy, and then I seen it in Unique Cars, but a bit more than I wanted to pay for it. And I rang the guy and said, look, if you don't get a buyer, and you're going to give it away,
let me know.
Cheap or whatever, let me know. So he did let me know, and I ended up buying it, and I took it home. I had about 3 years, and I put about 6,000-7,000 k's on it. I used to drive it everywhere, and it drove pretty good. And then I made my mind up it was time to move it on again. So I decided I'd clean it up, sell it, and deliver it to the Summernats, and I would drive it from Broken Hill to the Summernats and try and get it in the top 60.
There you go.
After driving there. So, of course, I rang Street Machine. They sent someone out, so we did a whole storyline and a magazine coverage, all the usual things that Howard does. And then the guy that bought it was from Dapto. And then it's had a lot of owners since then. So there's a few shots here of when we had it. So the Fairlane, weddings, just filling up with the servo there. Heather must have been with me, took the photo or whatever. And then Louise's prom. And then it had a few more owners, and it ended up back in Canberra. And then the guy that had it in Canberra had the Fitzpatrick boys give it a makeover. And it came back to the Summernats, I don't know how many years ago now, but a few years back, in a different colour, different wheels. They put twin turbos on it, pretty much stock engine, just with a couple of little turbos, and then retrimmed it, and it really was a different car.
Yeah.
It had lost what it was, and that's how it looks now. I see an ad somewhere about 2 years ago for sale for 90 odd grand.
Okay.
So it's obviously still in good nick, and that's where the car is to this day. I've got a lot of information that I'll put in the build series that we don't have time to put in here because we're already nearly up to an hour. So that became the end of that car from my ownership point of view, and I'm happy that it's still alive. And as I'd already mentioned, I'm trying to do the deal with Pioneer now for the next car. So I ended up with a handshake deal on the coupe. So I bought a coupe. And the reason for a coupe is I wanted to win Street Machine of the Year, and to get Dale Walton to vote for a Ford, about the only Ford I thought he was going to vote for was a coupe. Because every Holden person I asked, that was the story. So I needed to pull some Holden votes as well to get over the line for Street Machine of the Year. So that's the car that I bought. It was a local XC, and we'll get into that next time, obviously. And unfortunately, the guy I did the handshake with got another job offer and left, and a new guy came in, and it took me a whole year. So that car sat for like 6 months waiting, and then in the meantime we built a house and all. So all of that's in the next one. So there's a picture of it. That's sitting out across the road from the shop in the main street, waiting to park out the front and do a bit of promotion.
Street look we're after.
That's the Pro Street look. So that's what the Fairlane was going to look like, but under the bonnet, but that look. So that's why we built that way, to get that full on, get the vote. And we've got a house to build. So they'll be in the next episode.
It will.
So we're on a run over. I was trying to keep it under an hour, Dale, but I think I've missed the boat. I'm getting a bit dry. Don't forget, you've got to subscribe. Ring the bell. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
Yeah, so then you get notified when an episode comes out.
Good idea. So ring the bell. If you comment, I will generally personally get back and reply to your comment. If you say, love the show, I'll go probably thanks. But if you ask a question, I'll do my best to answer the question. And if you get the opportunity, it's clocking up now. Someone made a comment the other day that he just had a binge. It was about 5 hours to get to where we are now. So
how do you think we feel?
Go back and check out the other episodes. And we do this at night, so it's a bit of a drag. But we're loving it. Thanks again, Dale.
Good fun. Thanks, Howard.
I'll see if I can organise some new shirts for the next one.
Yeah, I'll look forward
Pioneer
to it.
shirts.
Sounds good. All right.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.